Okay, continuing with section 1.3.1. This is going to be a very quick video. There's not much more to cover in this part. So metabolic pathways. Many but not all reactions that occur in a cell are part of a metabolic pathway. A metabolic pathway is a number of reactions that are connected in series, where the product of one reaction is the starting reactant for the next reaction. So by series, it means that one reaction simply feeds into the next, and the end product here, the product of the metabolic pathway, for example, this generic pathway that we have here, the product of this metabolic pathway is molecule F, whereas the entry molecule is molecule A. And, of course, with any metabolic pathway, each reaction, for example, A to B, is catalyzed by enzyme 1, B to C is catalyzed by enzyme 2, C to D is catalyzed by enzyme 3, D to E is catalyzed by enzyme 4, and E to F is catalyzed by enzyme 5. So, as within the rule that we established earlier, no reaction, no chemical reaction in the cell, the chemical transformation, can occur without an enzyme involved. So there are two types of metabolic pathways, anabolic pathways and catabolic pathways. Now, in anabolic pathways, smaller molecules are used to make bigger molecules. Small molecules give bigger molecules. For example, protein synthesis. You can think of protein synthesis as an anabolic pathway. Why? Because amino acids are used to build proteins, which are much bigger molecules. Another anabolic pathway is photosynthesis, where CO2 and water are used to make carbohydrates. So again, the rule would be an anabolic pathway. It could be multiple reactions involved in an anabolic pathway. It could be just one or two. But the molecule that enters the pathway are going to be small molecules, and the molecule that exits is going to be a bigger molecule built from those smaller molecules. Catabolic pathways are the opposite, where bigger molecules are broken down to smaller molecules. Now, an example of this would be the opposite of amino acids to proteins. It could be proteins being broken down to amino acids. For example, the proteins that you eat in your meal, those proteins, those foreign proteins, they're not your own proteins, are broken down by your cells to their amino acids, and then the amino acids are used in anabolic pathways to build your own proteins. An example of another catabolic pathway is cellular respiration, where carbohydrates and other bigger molecules are broken down to CO2 and H2O, and ATP is made from that process. Now, as we saw before with proteins and amino acids, catabolic pathways and anabolic pathways are connected to each other. So in this picture, you can see bigger molecules here are led through catabolic pathways, and sometimes useful energy is harvested from breaking down these molecules, and some of it is going to be lost as heat, but you get a bunch of small molecules from breaking down bigger molecules, but then those smaller molecules can be used in anabolic pathways to build big molecules again. Okay, so what are some examples of two connected pathways? We saw the example of protein synthesis from amino acids, so you can even think about it as gene expression. For example, gene being transcribed into messenger RNA. And what is messenger RNA? How do you transcribe messenger RNA? You take ribonucleic acids, the monomers, ATP, UTP, GTP, CTP, and you build a messenger RNA. So by itself, that is an anabolic pathway, right? Because you're taking smaller molecules, building a bigger molecule. And then that messenger RNA is used to make a protein through translation. So what is being led into here is you have ribonucleotides, NTPs, nucleotide triphosphates, and here you have amino acids being used. Now, the same proteins in the messenger RNAs, they won't last forever in the cell. There's a pathway, a molecular pathway within the cell, sort of a metabolic pathway, that will break down those messenger RNAs and those proteins back down towards the NTPs and the amino acids. So then it can be used again in transcription and translation for gene expression. So these are two connected pathways: synthesis of protein and messenger RNA, and the degradation of messenger RNA and protein by the cell, because each protein and each messenger RNA has a fixed half-life within the cell. They don't last forever. And that is it for this section. All right, guys, we will continue with this with section 1.3.2. I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.